Yes. Okay, please, Srividya, introduce yourself and tell us where you are, and please tell us a story.
Sure. Thank you, Eric. Tanani, tani, nani, na. Tanani, tani, nani, na. Tani, 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 tanani, na. Tani, 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 tanani, na. Tanani, tani, nani, na. Hello, Vanakkam. My name is Srividya Veeraraghavan and I am from the very place where Eric is now, Chennai, India. I am student of Eric. He's my teacher. And I have been into oral storytelling since 2016. Today, the story that I bring in is very close to my heart, which I found it in 2016 in a book named A Girl Who Helped the Thunder, retold, authored by James and Joseph Burchett. Of course, they have been known as the traditional Native American storytellers. And yes, this story is so special. It comes from Native America, from the land of Seneca. A beautiful stories, beautiful collection of stories. And from that, I'm just picking up one story, which I have been, carrying with me and learning with me and developing myself as a person within about how stories came to be. So before I begin, I hope the next 15 minutes or so is going to be engaging. And even if you knew the story, we will make it a bit more colorful with due credits to the indigenous Seneca group, the legends from the land, and Joseph and James Burchett. I posed a question before I begin. Just imagine your world with no stories at all, and just type in your quick responses in the chat box. Imagine there were no stories. So what could be a world without story look like? If you could quickly, respond, give me an idea how the world would look like without a story. So, a world without a story. It's like the same flat, misty cloud, quiet, silent, and most importantly, boring, barren, no life at all, dark. And yes, in the land of Seneca, eons of years ago, when there was no stories around in our world, the people would sit around and look at the sky, gazing at the stars and the dark clouds and the far off mountains and the nearby lake. Boring sigh of what to say about what? In this land, the village of Seneca, there lived a boy. A small boy though. Yes. and the small boy was kind of empty with joy. He had no spark of imagination. There was something missing in the small boy. Most of the villagers called him Poshe, meaning an orphan, and few of them didn't miss to tell him or call him Goreka, meaning a crow. Maybe he looked like a crow. Maybe he had that shiny skin but with a lot of grease. Maybe his teeth had the stains of that corn that he had eaten, or the squash, or maybe the blood of that raw meat that he had eaten the day before. Or maybe he had no parents. His eyes were dark and small, but no spark. His lips were tiny, but no smile. The wrinkled lips, the greasy cheeks, and the hair which flow free with a trace of dirt and mud. The small boy used to look around and take his tiny bow and arrow. Every morning would march into the forest like anyone in that village. The men, the children, they all ventured into the forest to hunt, to fish, and the women, of course, they were into farming and agriculture and taking care of the family and the home back in the village. So, like any other normal villagers, this tiny small boy, maybe around 7 or 8 years old, would pick up his bow and arrow and march into the forest. Of course, with years of hunting into his life, he had already become a skilled hunter. He could easily spot on to the top of the hill, sitting those two little sparrows and the two little cuckoos, and then he could point it up straight into it, and he was able to catch many, many birds. Though he could carry on his shoulders and come back to his village. But his eyes and the lips kind of missed something. There was not much of talk among anybody and everybody. And this little boy was already looking for that warmth of the heart and the touch of a kindness. One day, he took out his bow and arrow and he marched into the forest as usual. But the day was a bit different. As he walked, the sun seems to be much more brighter. The clouds seem to have gone forever. And the trees seem to be looking much taller. Our little boy took the bow and arrow and he looked around and he couldn't find much of birds. What a strange day. Somehow the whole day that he searched and he could catch only two little birds that day. He took the birds, kept on his shoulders, and started walking back to his village. But that day seemed to be a bit different for him. As he marched, suddenly his eyes went straight onto a small cliff of rock. He felt he must rest, and he went near that rock, sat down, took out his bow, he cleared it, everything, he noted it, he kept it down, and he kept his head onto the rock, trying to close his eyes and telling himself within, someone I could talk to. And suddenly, child, Would you like to hear to some stories? Our small boy opened his eyes, looked here and there, but there was no one. He looked up, and when he saw the rock. It was the rock. The rock had now two big eyes, a long nose, and this big mouth. The rock was speaking. Child, do you want to listen to a story? Our small boy looked at, a bit shocked, a bit scared. But managing his guts, he looked and he said, oh, story? What is a story? As the boy didn't know what was a story named anybody in that world. Something different, and more than that, somebody was actually speaking to the boy. And the rock continued, oh, I shall tell you a story, but you must promise to listen and nod your head. Say no, no, and you must give me something in return. Immediately the boy took out the two little sparrows that he had hunted. He took out and kept under the rock with due respect, with humbleness, and he kept it and he bowed himself down and said, please share the story. Here are the two sparrows that I've hunted. And there the rock began to tell the fascinating stories of how this whole earth has been formed, of how this little green grass has bloomed, how this blue sky shines so bright. And all these stories that the boy kept listening. And as he was listening, the eyes, small black eyes, started to sparkle. The wrinkle-gripped lips started to become soft and moist as it was going upward with a beautiful smile. And there was a smile on this boy. The cheeks expanded and the cheeks looked much more glowing. The child, the small boy, was getting joy after listening to one story after the other. The heart was filled with joy, and that the joy that he was wondering for. And then when the sun began to set, the rock said, oh, that's it for today. And closed. The boy was in wonderstruck. He took out his bow and arrow, he thanked the rock, and he ran straight back to his village, shouting, hey, I got a story to tell! I got a story to tell! And like him, the others in the village were also very curious because they were also wanting someone to talk. Something. And as the boy ran into the village, everybody there were sitting around and they were looking to our boy. As he came, I want to tell a story. What story, eh? The women of the village asked him. I shall tell you the great stories of this earth. And all the men of the village also came forward. Oh, story, oh. And then, as the boy began telling the stories, one after the other, the reaction started. Oh. Huh? Huh? Neo. That's it. The whole villagers, the whole place looked to get spark, looked as if there was so much of brightness that the cloud of darkness, the without stories started to eliminate, and everybody there in the village were filled with joy, with spark, as the stories started entering into the land, into the hearts of everyone. That's it. Now our small boy, every day getting up early in the morning with so much of enthusiasm, ran into the forest, hunted as much as possible, came back to the rock, and with due respect gave it to the rock and listened to the many, many stories. Back to the village, retelling the stories to the people. Likewise, many months, years passed. Now our small boy was no more a small boy. Now our small boy with the greasy cheeks, no. Now he had become smart, tall, neat, and he was no more called Porsche or Gonica. He was called the Hage Hota, the storyteller. Everybody had respect for him because the stories that he would bring was so much of heart, was with so much of emotion, with so much of life. Hage Hota, our young man, became so popular and also wealthy. Years passed. Now that everybody liked Hage Hota, there were few who wanted to find the secret of from where does he get the stories from? From where is he finding all these beautiful stories? So one fine day, they were kind of a spy. They followed our Hage Hota into the forest. Half a day they walked behind the bushes hiding, and then they found our Hage Hota going into the rock, near the rock, presenting with the same humbleness, with the same respect. He presented whatever possible from his end to the rock, humbly bowed and asked, "Please share me the story." And then, whoosh, two big eyes, the long nose, and the mouth of the rock opened, and the story started to flow. But the men who were hiding behind the bush, hey, what is he talking to? Just a rock? We can't hear anything. We can't see anyone. Who is he talking to? The men couldn't see anybody, couldn't sense the stories. The secret remained. Nevertheless, our Hage Hota continued sharing stories into the world. Finally, one fine day, as Hage Hota went into the rock with the same respect, the rock opened and said, "Child, today, my final day of sharing stories to you. I have no more stories with me to share further." But then how do I get stories from? You have carried all the stories and filled all the people in the stories. If you wish to have more stories, now you must go to your people. You must go to the people whose hearts are now filled with stories. Yes, Gonika, Porsche, our Hage Hota, he went around with a new spark in his eyes. He went around the world to listen to the stories, to listen to the stories from his heart, to see the stories from his ears. Yes, as he understood that now everyone has a story to tell. Everyone longing to share their stories to the world and to themselves. The story, the story, and the story. The world filled with stories. Thank you so much for listening to The Origin of Stories. from the Seneca community. Thank you.
Srividya,
Yes, Eric.
you've really changed. You've really developed as an artist.
Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you.
Yes.
Eric, I was thinking the same exact thing. You look fabulous, and that was amazing. I'm not going to butcher your name because I can't say it, but but I know who you are, and that was, yes. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Eric, but
That's
I just
fine.
concur with you. I think you're. I haven't seen you tell that much, but I agree that you've just grown so much into your telling and your character and the pausing and the passion for that story came so clearly through. Thank you so much. I know that story, and that was a beautiful telling of it.
Thank you so much.
I agree with Rona. And could you please put the resource in the chat?
Yes, I will. Give me 10 minutes. I will just link it. I'll put it in the chat.
Gail, I believe it's in the Joseph Bruzak's Iroquois Tales, but I'm not 100% sure.
It was so artfully told. Thank you. And so real. So from your heart and from, yeah.
Thank you. There is a reason because this is healing stories, and this particular story has done magic into me. You know, after I haven't taken many workshops after Eric's workshop, but I believe that the stories select me, or the kind of stories that it touches my personality. And this particular story, I don't know, I didn't even know anything before that, but this beautiful story touched my heart so much, and I could sense it, that how much it is important to understand a story within than just on the words. So that's why I wanted to share this story today. Thank you.
You went to a storytelling festival in the USA. What was it, 2 years ago?
Yes. As like a passionate, I kept applying, and I got a New Voices scholarship from the Northland Storytelling Network in 2019. And I had an opportunity to travel to Wisconsin, Madison, and I met lovely people on the Northland Storytelling Network. I met most of the storytellers there. It was such a beautiful 4-day confabulation wherein we heard a lot of stories, and mostly I could see a lot of personal stories. But the story that I presented was it's called the Golden Bird. It is again one of the folk tales from India. So it was kind of a dramatic and everything and everybody felt that it was something very different and kind of refreshing for them. But yes, I really enjoyed myself thoroughly with the warmth of the people there, the welcome, and the kind of beautiful stories that I could hear from them. And there I also met Rona, and also met a few others there. So I had a great time. Yeah.
I think that visit made a big influence on you, had a big effect on you.
And we're very fortunate for that influence. Oh my goodness, it was beautiful. And Jesse Bruchek is going to be telling on YouTube a live event on Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I tried to put it in the chat, but it doesn't let me paste things. But if Cafe Lena, CAFFE, I can put that in the chat. So if you're interested in listening to Jesse tell some stories, so Cafe Lena, YouTube, let's see, and it's Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, February 23rd, and I believe it's at 7 p.m.
And just so people know, that's Joseph Bruzak, one of Joseph Bruzak's son, who is carrying on.
Yes.
The tradition.
Yeah. So, and as I said before, you know, you're telling a story from my neck of the woods, and it was amazing. Oh, so beautiful. I love the characterizations of the villagers as they listened to the story. That was that to me was magical. Thank you.
Oh, that was great, that part with all the faces and the,
And the rock figure was tremendous. It was almost, I didn't recognize you. I guess that's a general authority figure. So it could be a mother, could be a teacher, but that's a very strong authority figure character that you developed.
Thank you very much, Eric.
See, I have to tell everyone who doesn't know, a few years ago, Srividya, when she would perform, would talk very, very quickly, very, continuously, and tell the story and get all the information out, but sort of in a rush, and it didn't have the dramatic shape that what you just did has. So somehow you've managed to slow down and really develop the emotions and the drama.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you. It's a learning process.
Okay, great. Anybody else? Any thoughts? All right. Well, let's see. Let's